they do mention the social contract in Tasha's, and this is pretty well outlined. It has like 4 big tenets. You will respect the player by running a game that is fun, fair, and tailored for them. You will allow every player to contribute to the ongoing story and give every character a moment to shine. When a player is talking, you are listening. I think this is really great, and this is something like, especially like shows like Critical Role are very, very good about, is they give each other lots of time to do their thing. Like, I mean, when you think about Liam describing his tower, right, for Widowgast, that is like I would say a 40-minute, and I'm not necessarily saying give them 40 minutes, but that is a 40-minute like love note to his own players that he's working with, because he's made a room for each of them, and that was like a lovely moment. So that's a good one. And the second one is, players will respect you and this is talking about the DM. Players will respect you and the effort it takes to create a fun game for everyone. The players will allow you to direct the campaign, arbitrate, decide the rules, settle arguments. But when you are talking, the players are listening. A lot of this is just listen to each other. Very basic social contract stuff. Good things to learn in real life. Also, the third one is, players will respect one another, listen to one another, support one another, and do their utmost to preserve the cohesion of the adventuring party. This, I think, is the one thing that can fail sometimes in some groups. And then the final one is, should you or a player disrespect the other or violate a social contract in some other way, the group may dismiss that person from the table. And this is very unfortunate. It certainly happened in my own games where I had to let a player go. I would say, hopefully not inevitable, but it does happen, especially like the longer you play. You become faced with a very hard decision.
There are interesting pros and cons. Oh, sorry.
Just a very quick thing. I was going to say, usually before it comes to that, everyone knows, and if you don't say it, the whole group will fall apart. So it's like there's no point in trying to ignore it. Yeah.
That's actually a great segue to what I'm talking about. There are interesting pros and cons to clearly laying out a social contract. The pros, I think, far outweigh the cons, because everyone's on the same page, everyone's clear, there are no weird sort of edge cases or rules lawyering a social contract. The messiness is all cleaned away for the most part. I have noticed, and this is usually the big argument against including these sort of explicit social contracts at the table, and it's that there's a change in atmosphere that happens. Some people will think that some of the fun has been sucked out of the room, because now there are very clear guidelines. It's no longer just people palling around being dudes. Now there's kind of an expected mode of behavior. And
I got into... Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, keep going. You've got a cool anecdote.
No, please. I interrupted you, please.
I just have one more little thing to say. I think for the most part, it is 1,000% better to suck that little bit of air out of the room and just be clear with everyone. Especially if there are people who you don't know, who aren't your childhood friends who you've known all your life, who you practically have a psychic bond with. And even then, people change over the years, right? Like if you had a friend from high school and now it's however many years later, you meet up with them again, suddenly you're kind of different people. That psychic bond isn't as true as you thought it was. And all of a sudden someone says the wrong thing and there's a big blow up, and then suddenly your D&D game has been the cause of a nasty friend breakup. And it's like, damn, if only we made that social contract, this could have all been solved so much easily. And anyway, go on, B-Dave.
Something like this kind of came up earlier today in a different context. I'm somewhat of the opinion whenever you're like, hey, so everyone should be cool to each other, and somebody's like, well, but that means that I can't blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, bro. If that upsets you, you're the person, that is causing the problem, and to your point about how even with friends, I mean, I've seen this many times where people might be trying on different ideas, playing a different type of character. They might be, you know, exploring some things in themselves. I mean, of course, you know, to do Freud proud, sometimes a character is just a character where you're like, I'm playing a gnomish barmaid who's a barbarian and fights with a skillet. Let's go, you know, but sometimes there's more to it than that. And so you still have to respect those choices and respect that that's what the person is bringing to the table, and respect the choices that they're making in those moments. Now, if I could give just a thing that I find will always be useful to you at the table, and this transcends session 0, and Todd, let me know if we're gabbing too much about session 0, but it's hard
this whole thing is about session 0.
Hey, so I just didn't want to suck all the oxygen out of the room. When you're playing, always try and find a way to set up someone else for a cool moment. You know, like pass it to someone else, you know, on a camera. Be like, I hit him with a trip attack and get out of the way because I know she's about to attack, you know, or I don't know what to do. Hey, quiet person who hasn't talked in 20 minutes. What do you think we should do? You know, just like find ways to like pass the ball to the other person and kind of give them an easy in, because sometimes other people might be so concerned that they don't want to step on someone else's toes that they don't do anything. So, you know, trying to lead the league in assists, as it were.
That's me as a player. I never want to step on anyone else's toes. So yeah, I love hearing other people say that advice because it means I know I have an easier time playing.
It's also very rewarding when you see that happen, because you don't know what gem is going to come out of like the quietest people will knock it completely out of the park and just kill you with something just amazing.
Yeah.
I had a player who never role played, and for like I'd say about 10 sessions, almost said it and did not, like they did things, but they didn't role play. And then one day just killed the room. Like we just didn't see it coming. Like they finally came out of their shell. And they were the expert of those single, like almost Corbin Dallas quiet moments.
Yeah. One of my players, KJ, shout out to KJ. Same thing. Like she maybe says 10 words over the course of the evening, but like every one of them is an ace. It's like Gambit, just boom, like explosive. Yeah, and you gotta make room for it to happen.
And that's why playing these games is so fun, because like video games are fun and cathartic in their own way. I reviewed video games for 7 years, but when you're working with other people, and the whole point of this is to be creating a shared narrative. What's fantastic is the unexpected that you will see from your fellow players and how you will react and to those moments. That's what makes it fun, and that's why you remember it so well for years. I remember every campaign I've ever been in like it was yesterday. It is alarming.
Both your fellow players and the dice will surprise and amaze and often betray.
We were in like a heated set of combat, and this wonderful role player Hope Lavelle, like it became her turn, and she's like, I want to talk to the turtle. like life and death situation, and the most innocent person in the party did the most innocent thing and just kind of reminded us of like almost like the scariness of combat in a way where like kindness suddenly like got in like into the conversation as well in the middle of D&D combat. It was such a lovely moment.
I had a similar experience, and I had to check myself during it. I was playing a one-shot. I won't give too many details because you might be able to determine what the one-shot was, but we were fighting an enemy. One of the other people in the party had already been laid out. So this is, you know, pretty in-depth combat. And one of the other players is like, I have a book of law. I throw the book at him. Because that was the gag. I throw the book at him. And I literally was like, we're all about to die. Like, what's wrong with you? You know, but I had to just be like, wait. It's like, you know, I mean, just okay, it's all right. But I mean, even in my own heart, I had a moment there that I had to like put back in my heart box. You know, yeah.
It's a good reminder. It's okay to be suboptimal and have a suboptimal moment. And I love these moments when I see them in D&D in any game when someone's like, I would be terrified to not do anything. And yeah, part of you is like, get up and fight. But like, that's a great reaction in your character. But as a player, you're like, that's their moment. Like if their moment is to not engage in combat, that's always fantastic.
That is true.
And shocking and also terrifying for your livelihood as a character. But yeah. And again, this brings us to this concept of hard and soft limits that also is outlined. You might have heard this, called veils as well. But this is like you have a soft limit. And for a soft limit, this is something that you talk to your players about. This is a threshold that one should think twice about crossing. This is something like, it tends to make me kind of uncomfortable. That should be a warning sign to you to maybe not go in that direction, both as players interacting with that player or the dungeon master as well. This is stuff that will probably create genuine anxiety, fear, and discomfort. We all have our triggers. And again, this depends on what your current life situation is. So check in often if you can. And, that person's background and history. This is it's a very good idea to like watch it. But a soft limit also is like, that gives you a sense of like, okay, I don't want to get murdered by tentacles and octopus or deal with spiders or deal with relationship stuff. This is all very common stuff.
Talking about stuff like this is really, really valuable in cases of things that can happen in the real world, especially. The phobias are one thing, right? Arachnophobia is a classic example of, where does the limit of your arachnophobia fall? Because giant spiders, the Tolkien made giant spiders, they're everywhere. Like if you know that someone, or even if you don't know that someone has had like a friend who was murdered or something, then it's like, D&D is a game where people die a lot, usually by someone else killing them. Where does it fall? Are they okay enough about this real life issue where like you can have murder as like maybe an element of the setting because stuff like that happened in the real world in the past in fantasy worlds, or is it so deeply like psychologically problematic then that like find a game where or find a style of campaign where you don't have to have these sort of person killing events in the game. And if you can't reconcile with that as a player, as a DM, then that's also a valid part of the conversation. Maybe you don't want to play D&D. Maybe you should play a different sort of RPG like, I don't know, Fiasco or something like that, where you will still have an awesome time with your friends, but you don't have to confront a world where murder is constantly a possibility.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's not weakness either, right? That's not a moral failing on anyone's part. Yeah.
Hey, look, I did 2 seasons on a zombie horror survival show. I hate zombies. I hate zombies. I did it, quite frankly, because it was the biggest break I'd been offered at the time, and I don't regret it. But the entire time, I'm like it's not my jam. It's just not my thing, and it's okay if something is not your thing.
Yeah, completely. I think that, like, especially dark settings, like me and B-Dave, we're in a vampire game, and I forgot how punishing vampire can be. Like, the world of darkness is not called the world of darkness by accident.
Some things, choices were made in that game. Choices were made.
My way, because I was like, oh, this is kind of a bummer. I'm like, maybe I'll. And at first, I was playing a very comical character, but I found myself like doubling down on the awfulness and the darkness to cope with the darkness, to make like the rest of that universe easier for me to like absorb.
But that was a valid choice, and contextually it all worked, and it led to some really great storytelling. And even like you were saying with the phobias, like I just again, I won't get specific because you probably could figure out what I'm talking about, but recently a monster I designed debuted on a stream and tripped up 2 of one of the players' phobias, because I'd combined like 2 different elements of fairly standard horror, and it was like, that's a double nope. That's a double nope.
And when it comes to stuff like this, there is a safety tool, not mentioned in Tasha's, but very useful and known kind of in the broad safety tool RPG sphere, called the X card, made by a guy named John Stavropoulos. That is basically, you want to have some kind of tool on hand, a non-verbal tool, maybe literally an index card with an X thrown on it, that you can casually put on the table, without making a big deal about it, just saying like, this situation sucks for me. The situation is the sort of situation where if it continues, I will have to leave the table, maybe temporarily, maybe permanently, if we continue to go down this road. So let's bring it to an end.
Yeah, it is the yellow and red X are what we tend to use. And there's two things about that. With both the yellow and the red X, they're sacrosanct. Everything stops when they go out. But also, don't deploy the yellow and red X over nothing either.
Yeah. I mean, you use it for good reason, but don't feel bad about using it either.
Don't feel guilty for having an issue. Like that. Guilt's terrible. Like this is a game. This is supposed to be fun, and these are tools to make sure that fun never stops.
Yes, exactly.
But and I do, all things being equal, obviously I'm sure all of us have had our emotional moments at a D&D table, but all things being equal, unless the dungeon master has expressly set out to tell a traumatic story, it probably won't be. It's more adventure, it's more high fantasy, it is more, we're out doing heroing stuff. But I think a lot of times you'll come across things like parents. Like there's a person we all know who I was on a stream with, and we were discussing backstories, and they were like, my dad has got to be a good guy. And I was like, why? And they were like, because my real dad isn't.
Yeah. And
I was like, got it. Understood. No other explanation required. I had a conversation with Sam DeLive years ago when we did Theogony of Kairos, which is my first stream, and Sam is non-binary, and they wanted their character to be non-binary, and I was like, okay, but do the people in the world address this at all, or is it just normal? And they said to me, it's something I will never forget and have not forgotten since. They were like, no, everyone accepts it because I expect my fantasy world to be better than this one. Yes. And I was like, transmission received. But those are the conversations you have during session 0. Because to me, in my mind, having somebody in the world be like, wait, what, might be a normal reaction till I understood the rationale of like, no, don't at all. No, at all. And I was like, oh, got it. Yeah.
And if you're a DM, this can be a moment that you just kind of like say, okay, and you just kind of like put up a mental ward against it, or then you can take that and start world building with it, right? Like I've got a player who's playing a non-binary character in my game, and they are non-binary in real life also. And it's just like, I have opted, like you did, B-Dave, not to, make a big world building detail about it. The world just did not develop in such a way that there's that kind of bigotry in the world. And it's not addressed anywhere. But you could really dig into the, why is it this way? Why did things turn out so well in this world when they did not turn out so well on the planet Earth?
I would say things like that, though. I would put that type of story in the hands of someone that has lived that experience. With Into the Motherlands, we expressly designed Into the Motherlands to be a game that is a world that exists with zero colonialism. So all of the effects of colonialism haven't happened because we, as the people that are telling the story, have been on the other side of that. So we can hearken unto a world where there's not the thing. Now, this is a sticky thing that I just said, so let me clarify here. I am not saying that a cisgendered white male can't tell a story, a compelling LGBTQ story, or a male can't tell a female story, or a female can't tell a man's story. I'm not saying any of that. I'm saying if you are trying to make a sweeping social statement, maybe only make it when it's been your experience. That's
And it's great
gonna fumble the ball.
0. It's great at session 0 to figure out where everyone's comfort level with that lies, because things on the internet, when you're talking to thousands of people at once, are very different when you're talking to a group of 5 of your best friends, or 5 strangers, if you're playing at a convention, which hopefully will happen again in 2020. too.
Yeah, streaming a game and playing the game around your table at home are two totally different animals in many ways.
Yeah, being in the same room is valuable. Yeah, I just want to say one little thing, and I'm sorry, Todd, I know I'm rambling, but I would just say, if you're not quite sure what your group is looking for, and they may not know, so they may not be able to articulate it to you, I'm going to tell you a couple things you can count on. Everybody wants an opportunity to contribute something where they're important. Everybody wants to be at cause in the narrative, where what they do or don't do matters. And everybody wants a chance where, again, they get to shine. You know, that is the point of these games that we play, where we take on these heroic or villainous roles, but they are roles of consequence and substance, and they're people that matter and have an impact on their world. So let your players have that.
Yeah.
If you're ever lost, build off of that.
Those are the best moments I've ever had dungeon mastering, is when especially when you kind of like, certainly you've moved the storyline in a certain direction, and you've added the villains and all this stuff. But when there is a session that is almost entirely the players talking to each other, and I just sit back and watch the chaos, I am probably at my happiest. I feel like that is like an achievement of its own. Like, where I almost did nothing.
Can I just share an anecdote for this? This was Todd as storytellers. This is Beyond Heroes. This is back when I was still just a guest. I think this was the second time Freely'd been on, maybe the third time, because when the Illithid invasion was on, and he had the coin of Saranthus, and there was an evil goddess trapped in the coin, and I literally messaged Todd, if I release this evil goddess, is it gonna mess up the story? And I just got like ... No. And it was like, well, okay, because I'm new here, like Dave knew it's an evil goddess, Freely didn't, and she's like, hey, let me out and I'll save your friends, and he's like, okay, that's what I'm here to do, let's go. So I just remember that moment. I even saw on his face when he was like,
I like chaos.
It worked out. Master. It worked out. We reset time. It worked out. It's
when someone wished, I wish everything hadn't happened. And then we restarted the game. Everyone was back in prison together.
We rebooted the show. Yeah, that did happen. But again, it's times like that. But also, do notice in that moment, I did check in with him real time. I was like, I'm about to detonate a nuke. Is that all right?
I am famously nuke friendly as a dungeon master, because again, it means I get to bob and weave and try to come up with a storyline. And it's often not a storyline I thought was going to happen. And that's why I love players. Players are just the best. Yep. I know not everyone likes chaos, but I do, because I trust my players, and this is the whole point. We did stray away from the hard limit, and the hard limit should be very clear. Don't ever go there.
Yeah. Don't even talk about it.
We don't really even need to talk about it. The hard limit is like, don't ever do this thing ever. There's no shades of gray on this. It's just, please don't ever bring this up.
That's where the X card drops instantly if that hard limit has been violated.
Exactly, and that's the X card. That's the I don't like it. There are things I genuinely learned I do not like because of my own personal background, and like, I don't like being treated like a street urchin. Not my favorite thing. I take it very personally, and I don't have a way to censor that, apparently. Like, I don't like being like someone treating me differently because I'm poor. But if you give me a chance to kill a king with poison, I will take it every time.
We call an Eldritch Blast poison now.
Sure.
Right.
Well, these were pre-Eldritch Blast days, so.
Total aside. Shout out to James Haeck, because we were talking about like squeaking out players and realizing how far you can go with something. I did my Mind Flayers in season 2 of Dungeons and Dragons of Dark and Wish, and Mind Flayers were the adversaries. And I read your articles, James, about how to play them like eldritch horrors instead of relatively squishy, like tentacle face people. It was delightfully awful. Thank you for that. And we pushed it, man. We pushed it. We pushed it because it was all psychological torment. That's all they were about. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. So